Have you ever trusted someone so completely that when they betrayed you, it didn't explode? It unraveled? Not with shouting or chaos, but with a single quiet message that ended everything. That's how it started for me. Just one email. Subject: Fine. Let's handle this like adults. No warmth, no apology, just a cold attachment. My name is Martín Cárdenas. I'm 45 years old, a special operations officer with over 2 decades of service. At the time, I was stationed on a covert mission near the Arizona-Mexico border. 3 months in, when Lucía, my wife of 13 years, decided she was done waiting. The email said she had already filed for divorce, that she had emptied our shared account, that her new boyfriend was now living in our house in Albuquerque, the same house I renovated with my own hands. I read it. Twice. Then I closed the laptop, stood up, took a cold shower, got dressed, and went back to work. I didn't call, didn't write back to argue, didn't ask questions. My reply was one word: understood. Some people think strength is about control, about yelling louder or hitting back faster, but men like me, we've learned something different. True strength lives in silence, in watching, in preparing. That night, my colleague Luis asked, "You all right, hermano?" I nodded. "Just some things back home." He said nothing else. Because men like us, we know when to speak, and more importantly, when not to. What Lucía didn't realize was that I had already felt the shift. The late nights, the hidden phone, the change in her eyes. I didn't confront. I took precautions. Because betrayal is one thing, but thinking I wouldn't see it coming, that was her mistake. Now let me ask you, what would you do if the person you built your life with tried to erase you while you were out defending something bigger than yourself? If this story pulls at something inside you, stay. Subscribe. Share this with someone who understands what real loss feels like. And if you've ever been betrayed, I want to hear your story in the comments. Maybe your truth is the beginning of your own justice. 6 months before that email arrived, the signs were already there. Small, almost invisible if you weren't paying attention. But I was. Lucía had started working late at the holistic clinic, where she managed scheduling, a place she once told me she loved because it gave her balance and peace. Suddenly, that peace needed extra hours and weekend retreats. She also started going to the gym more often, even though her routine never seemed to leave a trace of sweat or soreness. She bought new clothes, looser, trendier, not her usual modest taste. She stopped asking me about my work, even though she used to hang on to every word. At first, I told myself it was just stress, a phase. But phases don't come with locked phones, private accounts, and that constant sense that the person you love is looking through you instead of at you. Still, I didn't confront her. That's never been my way. My father used to say, "Martín, if you want to know the truth, you don't go shouting after it. You sit still and it comes to you." So I sat still. I listened. And I prepared. Quietly. Carefully. I rented a small private storage unit across town under a different name. I placed inside it everything I couldn't afford to lose: my late mother's wedding ring, my military service medals, the only photo I have of my grandfather in uniform. I made photocopies of our most important documents and tucked them away there. The deed to the house, birth certificates, insurance, paperwork, and more importantly, the power of attorney and pension files she didn't even know existed. But I didn't stop there. I opened a new bank account at a local credit union, one Lucía had no access to, and began shifting part of each paycheck there. Not much. Just enough to start building a wall she wouldn't see coming. I even contacted an old friend from my early days on the force, Camila, now a top-notch attorney in New Mexico, and casually asked about asset protection. We had lunch once, nothing suspicious. But I walked away with 3 key documents in my name alone and a quiet understanding that if I ever needed to move fast, she'd be there. Then there was the refinance conversation. One night over dinner, Lucía brought it up like it was nothing. "Hey, would you mind signing this? I'm thinking of restructuring the mortgage." "Just to get better rates, babe. Lower monthly payments." The papers were neat, crisp, professionally done. But my gut said no. Something about the way she was watching me while I read them. Too calm, too prepared. I smiled, nodded, and said, I'd look over it later. Then I took them with me on my next overnight shift and never brought them back. A week later, she never mentioned them again. Every instinct in my body knew a storm was coming. But I didn't panic. I trained for years to stay calm under pressure. Whether in the field or at home, I always believed that control is earned, not forced. So I waited, like a sniper in a silent field. And the day that email landed in my inbox, I wasn't broken. I was ready. Because while Lucía thought I was too far away to see what she was doing, she never realized I was already 3 moves ahead. I met Lucía in the spring of 2010 at a mutual friend's engagement party in Santa. Back then, she was radiant in a grounded way, warm, calm, with a voice that felt like Sunday mornings. She was studying holistic health and spoke with conviction about energy, healing, and intention. I'd just come back from a 2-month security contract overseas and wasn't looking for anything serious. But there was something about the way she laughed, like she meant it, and the way she asked questions without trying to impress. We started slow, weekend hikes, cooking together, music on vinyl, long talks about meaning, about balance. Within 8 months, we moved in together. A year later, we were married under the cottonwoods beside the Rio Grande. No big wedding, just a few friends, a rented arch, and a lot of hope. In the early years, we had little money, but it didn't seem to matter. I was with the department full-time and working weekends in private security. Lucía opened a small yoga studio that didn't make much, but it gave her purpose. We had our routines: Sunday farmers markets, Friday night wine, watching bad movies on the couch. She'd wait up for me when I had late shifts. She'd send little notes in my lunch, breathe today or come back safe, love. I never doubted her loyalty. Not once. And maybe that's what made the unraveling so brutal. Not just the betrayal, but how far she had drifted from the woman I thought I married. Looking back, the change didn't happen all at once. It crept in. After her yoga studio closed during the pandemic, she started doing online coaching, mindfulness, nutrition, business energy alignment. At first, I supported her. I even helped her set up the office at home. But soon, I noticed her entire world had shifted. She started using strange vocabulary, talking about vibration, emotional recalibration, and sovereign finances. It sounded rehearsed, like something she picked up from someone else. Then came the online retreats, $300 Zoom courses, run by digital gurus. One of them, a guy named Nico, seemed to come up more and more. I never met him, but his name started popping up on her Venmo, then on her stories. He sold crypto advice, digital detox plans, and preached about liberating yourself from the illusion of loyalty. I asked once, just once, who he was. She laughed it off. Just a friend from the coaching group. But the way she said it felt rehearsed. I started noticing more gaps, moments when she was home but emotionally somewhere else. She stopped, coming to family dinners, stopped asking about my cases. One night I walked in from work early and she quickly minimized a Zoom window before greeting me with a hug that felt staged. I didn't accuse her. I just kissed her cheek and walked past. But inside, a quiet line had already been drawn. When I suggested taking a weekend trip together, just the two of us like old times, she said she had a women's healing circle scheduled. Another time, I offered to pick her up from a seminar she was attending, and she said, "No need, Nico's giving me a ride." Just like that. Casual. As if she didn't notice the way my jaw locked. I didn't respond. I didn't even raise an eyebrow. But that night, I dug deeper. I logged into our shared financial account and saw transfers to strange platforms, names that didn't match her business. I called Camilla the next day and asked her to help me set up monitoring on any assets tied to my name. Lucía never noticed, and maybe that was the part that hurt the most. How easy it was for her to assume I was blind, that I'd never see her slipping away. That the man who could spot lies on a suspect's face within seconds, who could track a crime network through 5 layers of shell accounts, wouldn't notice the woman sleeping beside him turning into a stranger. But I did notice. I noticed everything. And the only reason I stayed quiet wasn't fear, it was strategy. Because even though I still wore my wedding band in the field, even though I still hoped some part of the woman I loved was still in there, I knew better. Love doesn't hide. Love doesn't shift blame. And real partners don't lie with calm eyes. So I watched. I prepared. And when Lucía finally made her move, when she sent that cold email thinking she had buried me in silence, I was already standing above the ground, shovel in hand, ready to dig her lies out one by one. 3 weeks after Lucía's email, I was still stationed near the Arizona border, rotating between surveillance duties and debriefs. The work was intense, but it kept me focused, until the morning I received a bank notification that turned the slow ache in my chest into something sharper. I was having coffee at a checkpoint post when my phone buzzed. At first, I thought it was another transfer to her wellness accounts. But this one was different. A large withdrawal, $47,200, drained directly from our joint savings. I froze. That was nearly everything left. The account we'd built for emergencies, for our future. Connors transferred to a private account I didn't recognize. I set my mug down slowly, my mind sharpened. All emotion dropped out of me like dead weight. I excused myself from the post and stepped outside, calling the bank from a secure line. The agent confirmed what I already suspected. The withdrawals had been happening in small increments since the week I left for duty. First hundreds, then thousands, hidden in the noise of monthly expenses, camouflaged with smart naming. But this one? This was the final cut. I asked the representative to flag the account for fraud. She hesitated, because Lucía was still listed as a co-owner. My authority wasn't enough. Yet. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my barracks, then finally opened my laptop. I logged into the security system I had installed, back when I was still trying to save the marriage. It was synced to a cloud drive, silent, discreet, something Lucía likely forgot about. I clicked into the camera feeds. Front porch, living room, kitchen. The system had motion-triggered clips. Saved. I watched the footage in slow silence. There was a man, tall, lean, bearded, maybe mid-30s, moving around my house like he owned it, wearing my t-shirt, drinking from my coffee mug, walking our dog, kissing Lucía in the same kitchen where we used to slow dance to old boleros on rainy nights. I didn't feel rage. I felt calculation. I paused the footage, took a screenshot, and saved it in a new folder labeled Evidence. Then I opened another window and began compiling a document. Times, names, dates, transactions. The house was still in both our names, technically, but I had kept a separate copy of the deed and mortgage agreement that showed I was the sole signee of the original VA loan. That would matter soon. The next morning I called Camilla. "It's happening," I told her. She didn't ask questions. "Start sending me everything. I'll file a protective injunction on the property immediately." I hung up and felt the first breath of control return to my chest. But I wasn't done. I needed to understand what Lucía was doing beyond draining accounts and cuddling a stranger in my bed, so I dug deeper. I traced the large transfer. It had gone to a shell company listed as Holistic Rise Consulting LLC. A quick public search tied it to none other than Nico, her friend. A company barely 6 months old, registered in Colorado but tied to multiple interstate fund transfers, none of which looked clean. The more I looked, the more it felt familiar. Too familiar. I'd seen these structures before. Layered transactions, sudden property movements, quick loan buyouts. It smelled like financial laundering wrapped in a soft spiritual bow, and then came the twist I didn't expect. Through another financial lookup, I discovered a loan had been taken out, against our house, a large one, $320,000, processed just 2 months earlier. But I had never signed anything. Curious, I requested a copy of the loan file from the bank that processed it. When it arrived, I scanned the PDF and felt my stomach turn. My name was there, my signature. Except it wasn't. Not exactly. The stroke was wrong. My middle initial was missing. And the date? I was already deployed when it was filed. Lucía, or someone working with her, had forged my signature to pull equity from the house. It was fraud, plain and simple. I called Camilla again. They refinanced the house, I said, with a forged signature. She was silent for a moment. Then, "You ready to press charges?" I didn't answer right away. I stared out the window of the base, watched a dust storm curl in the distance, and said, "I'm ready to take back everything that's mine." I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to warn her. I just needed to document every move and let her keep walking into the trap. Because when someone thinks they've already won, that's when they stop watching their back. And I was just getting started. I returned to Albuquerque without saying a word to Lucía. No warning, no messages, no change in our shared calendar that might give her even the faintest idea I was back on U.S. soil. I checked into a modest motel under a different name, burner phone, no credit cards, no digital trail. I wasn't hiding from her. I was watching. I met Camilla the next morning at a small diner on the outskirts of town. She was already seated in a booth, a file folder waiting between her hands like a loaded weapon. "This," she said as I sat down, "is everything we have so far." Inside, a copy of the forged refinance document, screenshots from the home security footage, bank statements showing withdrawals, and a list of online transfers to Nico's shell company. But that wasn't the part that made me pause. Camilla slid one more document across the table. "This one might interest you," she said. It was a listing agreement. Our house, on the market, listed at $499,000. A local agent named Ramiro Perez was managing the sale. I frowned. "Never heard of him." "That's because you weren't supposed to," Camilla said. "He's connected to Nico. They've flipped at least 3 properties, together in the past year. All of them with suspicious timelines, all involving recently separated or divorcing women." My jaw tightened. "Let me guess. Undervalued flips, fast cash closings, third-party LLCs as buyers?" "Exactly," she nodded. "You're not the only one." That afternoon, I parked across from my old house. Lucía's SUV was in the driveway, along with a different car, sleek, black, windows tinted. I stayed in my truck, engine off, and watched. I saw movement inside. A man walking through the kitchen with papers in his hand. Lucía following him, pointing. Probably Ramiro. Probably prepping the house for showings. I didn't move. I just watched. Later that night from the motel, I pulled up the camera feeds. Again. Ramiro and Lucía were in the living room walking with another man I hadn't seen before. Young, tall, well-dressed. A potential buyer? Maybe. But it was the audio that caught my attention. "List at $499K, Ramiro was saying. "But, tell them we'll take $460 if they waive the inspection." "That's fast," Lucía said. "We need it to move," he replied. "Nico's got a buyer lined up, cash." My chest tightened. They weren't just trying to sell the house. They were trying to liquidate it quickly, quietly, before I could act, before I could even be notified. I recorded the feed, saved the clip, and sent it directly to Camilla. Within minutes, she replied, "We're escalating this. I'm filing a motion in the morning to freeze the title and notify the fraud division." But it didn't stop there. I dug further. Using a background check tool, I looked into Ramiro Perez. No criminal record, but a suspicious number of LLC registrations tied to real estate sales, most of them dormant. One in particular caught my eye, Desert Path Holdings. A cash buyer listed on Lucía's sale agreement. The listed manager, Nico Vargas. The walls were closing in. 2 days later, I went to the bank that had processed the refinance. I brought a printed copy of my military ID, the original deed in my name, and a certified copy of my signature from my driver's license. I asked to speak with the loan officer who had approved the file. A man in his 50s with nervous eyes and a tight grip on his coffee mug. I showed him the forged document. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I just asked, "Do you see what's wrong here?" He paled. "We'll need to report this immediately." "I already have," I said. but I wanted to give you a chance to correct it yourself before the investigation expands. That night, Lucía texted me for the first time in months. Lucía. Martín. I think we need to talk. The bank is asking questions. I don't know what's going on. I stared at the screen for a long time, then typed a single reply. Me. Who is Nico Vargas? She didn't respond right away. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, her bubble appeared, typing, stopped, typing again. Then a message. It's not what you think. I didn't respond. The next morning, the county clerk's office confirmed the title freeze had been placed. No transactions could move forward without my written consent. The fraud division had launched an official case. Camilla called me that afternoon. We're in it now, she said. Nico's company is being looked into for federal violations, interstate fraud, identity theft, and targeted schemes against military personnel. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is already watching them. Your case may be the one that finally breaks this open. I sat on the edge of my motel bed, phone still in hand, the sun setting through the blinds like stripes across my face. I didn't feel victorious, not yet. But I felt something shift. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't just reacting. I was turning the tide. The plan was no longer about defense. It was about justice. Quiet, deliberate justice. The kind that doesn't knock on the door. It kicks it down with a badge and a warrant, and Lucía had no idea it was already on its way. I sat in my car the next morning, parked in a familiar spot just 1 block away from my old house. I'd lived there for 13 years. I planted every lavender bush along the fence, laid every stone in the backyard path, hung every picture frame in the living room with my own hands. Now it felt like a stage, filled with actors I never cast. At 9:42 a.m., I saw Lucía walk out the front door. She was dressed simply, hair tied up, phone pressed to her ear, talking about something I couldn't hear. Her SUV pulled out of the driveway a few minutes later, headed toward downtown. I didn't follow. I already knew where she was going, where she thought I'd be waiting to hear her side of the story. But I wasn't going, because I didn't need to hear any more stories. I needed proof. At 10:15, a silver sedan pulled up in front of the house. Real estate logo on the door, Perez Realty Group. I'd seen it on the paperwork. Ramiro stepped out first, holding a folder and a tablet. Nico followed minutes later, well-dressed, polished, but still wearing that smug look I'd seen on the security footage. They rang the bell, unlocked the door, and walked right in. I pulled out my phone, opened the security camera app, and streamed the feed live. As soon as the footage loaded, I hit record. The living room camera showed Nico pointing out corners of the house while Ramiro spoke clearly. We should officially list by this weekend. I have a buyer ready to go, cash in hand. Nico nodded. Stick to $499, but we'll take $460 if they waive the inspection. Ramiro smirked. And the husband? Old military guy, he said. Probably somewhere out in the desert. They like to bark but back off when you threaten legal action. A chill went down my spine, not fear but certainty. They had no idea they were being recorded, documented, and legally cornered with every word. I didn't wait. I sent the clip to Camilla with a subject line. Happening now. Multiple voices. Fraud confirmed. 30 minutes later, she called. The FBI's in. They're ready. We can coordinate with the Financial Crimes Unit for an on-site arrest. At exactly 12:02 p.m., I watched 3 unmarked black SUVs roll into the neighborhood. Plainclothes agents stepped out, radios in their ears, eyes scanning the perimeter. One gave the signal. In under 2 minutes, they surrounded the property. Knocked. Entered. Nico was cuffed first, still mid-sentence. Ramiro froze, completely stunned. He tried to dial out, but an agent grabbed the phone before it reached his ear. Lucía wasn't home. And for a moment, I thought maybe that was for the best. I left my truck and drove to the meeting place I'd arranged with Camilla, a small legal office a few blocks away. When I arrived, she had already laid everything out on the table. The fraud claim, copies of the forged mortgage documents, bank records, security footage, and the audio transcript. "We've come a long way," she said, locking eyes with me. "Now it's your choice. What do you want from this?" I didn't respond immediately. My mind flashed to all the nights I came home and found Lucía asleep on the couch, our dog curled up at her feet. I remembered the messages she'd send when I was deployed. "I miss you. Stay safe. Come home to me." I remembered the hesitation in her voice when I asked about those strange retreats. Every moment, from her smallest lies to her biggest betrayal, twisted like a thick wire inside my chest. But I wasn't here to feel. I was here to finish it. "I want back what's mine," I said. "And I want her confession, in writing. Signed." Camilla nodded. "And if she refuses, then I'll let the FBI handle it." That night, Lucía texted me for the first time in months. "Lucía, I don't understand what's happening. Nico got arrested. Agents came to the house. Please talk to me." I didn't reply. I sent one message back. "Me. I know everything. The refinance, the forged documents, the money transfers. My lawyer will be in touch." She didn't respond. The next day, Camilla called. "Lucía's agreed to cooperate. She'll sign a confession, surrender all claims to your assets, waive any right to spousal support, and withdraw any legal filings she made. In exchange, you don't press criminal charges." I stayed silent, not because I was unsure, but because the answer had been clear to me for a long time. I didn't need revenge. I needed closure. With her, and with the past. 1 week later, I returned to the house one last time to collect my remaining things. The place was empty, the scent of peppermint oil still faintly lingering in the air. On the wall was a faded mark where our wedding photo used to hang. I walked slowly through each room, hand brushing the doorway, the floorboards, the empty shelves. Not to remember, but to say goodbye. I closed the door behind me softly, like laying a memory to rest. And for the first time in months, I felt my chest lighten. I didn't win with rage. I reclaimed my life with patience, with strategy, with truth. And just like that, I walked out of the darkness, not as a betrayed husband, but as a man who had taken back his name. A month passed, the dust settled, paperwork was signed, and the legal proceedings moved forward without resistance. Lucía stayed quiet. Nico remained in federal custody, now the subject of a growing investigation that stretched beyond New Mexico. And I tried to resume something like a life. I left Albuquerque not long after that final visit to the house. There was nothing left for me there. Every corner carried the weight of betrayal. Every street had a memory I didn't want anymore. So I drove north with no plan, just the intention of finding stillness somewhere else. I ended up in a small town outside Durango, Colorado, quiet, pine-scented, mountains in the distance, a place where people still waved at you from their porches, not knowing or caring what you'd been through. I found a small cabin for rent, 2 bedrooms, wood floors, a fireplace I never learned how to use properly. It was humble, but it was mine. I didn't need much anymore. My pension covered the bills, and the rest I made doing freelance security assessments for local businesses, grocery stores, a medical clinic, even a few ranchers who wanted to install surveillance systems. It wasn't thrilling, but it gave me something to do with my hands, something to structure the days. Most mornings I woke early, drank black coffee on the front porch, and watched the sun rise slow over the ridge. But even in that peace, the memories didn't completely disappear. Some nights they arrived without knocking. A flash of Lucía's laugh from years ago, the way her handwriting curved on sticky notes she used to leave by the fridge, the sound of her voice saying my name when she was happy. They didn't hurt anymore, but they didn't pass through cleanly either. I learned not to fight them, just let them come and go. That's what healing became for me. Not forgetting, just not letting it own me. Then one day, something changed. I received a letter, real mail, handwritten, addressed simply, to Mr. Martín Cárdenas. Inside was a note from a woman I had never met. Her name was Angela Ramirez. Her husband, a Navy officer, had been targeted by the same real estate scam that Nico and Ramiro had run. The FBI had contacted her after building their case, letting her know the operation had been broken because of evidence gathered in my case. She wrote, "You don't know me, but your courage helped save our home. You fought back when most people would have walked away. Thank you." I read that letter twice, then pinned it to the refrigerator in my little cabin. It's still there, on days when the silence feels too loud, or when the past tries to edge back in through the cracks. I look at it and remember that something good came from it all. That by standing up, not with violence but with clarity, I made a difference for someone else. Not out of revenge, but out of principle. I don't know where Lucía is now. Last I heard through Camilla, she had moved back to Oregon to live near her sister, supposedly working in a wellness studio again. I don't hate her, not anymore. I don't feel much at all when I think of her. And maybe that's the best outcome I could have hoped for. Some endings aren't dramatic, they're just quiet fade-outs like a radio signal drifting out of range. You stop listening, and after a while, you stop noticing the silence. As for me, I'm still here, still waking up early, still finding peace in the things that can't be stolen, like a quiet morning, a loyal dog, or the dignity of having faced hell and come out clean. I never planned to be the man who exposed a criminal operation. I just wanted what was mine. But sometimes, doing the right thing ripples further than you think. And that, I've learned, is a kind of justice too. 1 year after the arrest, I stood on the porch of that same cabin, Scout, the German shepherd I'd adopted from a rescue shelter, lying at my feet, eyes half closed, ears twitching to the wind. The mountains ahead were turning orange with the early autumn sun. The peace was real now. Not just a moment of calm between storms, but something earned, something built slowly from the rubble. I had rebuilt my life brick by brick, not with grand plans, but with quiet consistency. No more battles, no more lawyers, no more surveillance cameras. Just mornings like this where the loudest sound was the wind in the trees and the steady rhythm of my own breath. The FBI case had come to a close a few months earlier. Nico Vargas was sentenced to 11 years for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. Ramiro Perez got 7. They flipped on 2 more accomplices in Nevada and Arizona, names I'd never heard, but part of the same network that preyed on soldiers, officers, and first responders who were too far from home to see the betrayal coming. My testimony had helped form the backbone of the indictment. I'd sat through hours of questioning, court statements, affidavits. It wasn't easy. Reliving every moment was like reopening a wound. But when Agent Simmons called to thank me personally, said that over a dozen families had come forward, after the arrests finally understanding what had happened to them, it all felt worth it. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was right. Because silence lets predators thrive. And because Lucia's betrayal, however personal, however painful, was part of something bigger, something that needed to be stopped. In the end, she signed everything over. She kept her freedom, but lost the game. Her name is a footnote in the case now, a name on a report, not on my mind. I still get letters now and then, from people who found my story through others, from families who almost lost everything but didn't, because one man paid attention, took notes, and refused to go quietly. And on the quietest nights, when I look out into the dark and feel that old weight on my chest, I remind myself, I didn't just survive it, I ended it. For me, and for them. Betrayal doesn't always look like a knife in the back. Sometimes it looks like a signature forged in your name, a laugh in your kitchen that doesn't belong to you, a home you built being sold while you're hundreds of miles away, trusting the wrong person with the keys. But here's what I've learned. Pain is part of life, but what you do with that pain defines the man you become. When Lucía betrayed me, I could have broken down. I could have lashed out, burned everything, or disappeared into silence, but I didn't. I watched, I listened, and I acted smartly, patiently, lawfully. That's not weakness. That's power. In moments like those, emotion tempts you to explode. But wisdom reminds you, Control is more powerful than chaos. The man who waits, who moves strategically, who knows the value of truth and timing, that man wins. Not just the battle, but his dignity. Because justice doesn't always need a raised voice. Sometimes it only needs a calm one backed by undeniable facts. So if you're watching this and you've been betrayed, whether by a partner, a friend, or someone you thought would never turn on you, hear this. You are not alone. And your silence doesn't mean you're defeated. It means you're gathering strength, planning your next move, preparing to reclaim what's yours, not through anger, but through truth, strategy, and self-respect. Let this be your reminder that no one can take your name, your honor, or your peace unless you hand it to them. And you don't have to. Ever. If this story resonated with you, if it echoed something you've lived through or helped you see your own power more clearly, take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Your experience might give someone else the clarity they need, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Because here we don't just tell stories, we reclaim them. Quietly, powerfully, one truth at a time.